So I wanted to take a moment to follow up on the previous video that talked about sequences of transformations, and I wanted to just kind of walk through the different situations that we have. So this function that I've been using is, to the fourth degree. So you see those kind of nice curves there. What I'm going to do is kind of move through the transformations in each of these orders. Now, if we remember that the A was the vertical, and you can actually see it down here. Notice A is outside and it's multiplied, so A is going to represent the vertical stretch. The B is going to represent the horizontal compression. C is going to be the vertical shift, and D is going to be the horizontal shift. And so I'm going to walk through, I'm going to show how each of these 6 different ways are going to lead to the same ending spot, and kind of walk through how each one gets there. And so the first thing to keep in mind is, as we look at this first equation here, that notice in all these cases, if we're talking about the vertical to vertical and the horizontal to horizontal, notice the A is always before the C. The A is always before the C. And the D is always before the B. The D is always before the B. So what that tells us is, if we want to get to this point, the only thing that we have to keep in mind when we're doing our order is that A is before C. So our vertical stretch has to come before our vertical shift, and that D, our horizontal shift, has to come before our horizontal compression. So we're going to go through this first one. We're going to go through AC, DB. And we're going to end up in this point. Notice that we started with our red curve here, and we're going to end up with this orange curve. But I want us to kind of walk through how that's going to happen relative to the directions that we're going in. In this case, we're going A, C, D, B. So I highlighted my, highlight my orange one, and now A, I'm going to shift A first. So notice as I do that, my A is stretching out vertically. See how that's stretching out vertically? And then C is going to come next. C is that shift up, everything's shifting upward. Now notice this little spot over here was on the axis. If it goes up one, it's going to need to move all, oops, sorry, that was B. C is going to need to go up to 1. And then D, that's our horizontal shift. Now notice that point goes from -1 in the x all the way over to -2. So we've shifted over by 1. And now lastly, we're going to compress. We're going to move everything halfway in toward the axis. So everything squeezes in. And we're to our final spot. Now I'm going to put those back real quick. And we're going to walk through that again, except now we're going to do A, D, B, C. So it's a different order, but we're going to end up in the same place because our very particular pieces that we have to keep in mind are going to be relatively the same. The A is going to come before the C, and the D is going to come before the B. So now I'm going to do A. That's my vertical stretch. I'm going to stretch that out. Then I'm going to do D. That's that shift over. Then I'm going to do B. Notice I'm squeezing it in. And now I'm going to shift everything up. Okay, so even though I went in a different order, I ended in the same place. right, let's reset those. We'll do maybe a couple more from this. So if I do A, D, C, B, I've got stretching vertically, A, D, shifting horizontally, C, shifting up, and then finally compressing horizontally. Okay. And just so we can see that we can do even more, the next one I'm going to do D, A, B, C. So first we're going to shift horizontally. Then A, we're going to stretch vertically. Then B, we're going to squeeze in, compress horizontally. And then finally, we're going to raise up by 1. Now notice, even though each time we've gone through a different process, because we kept those horizontals in the same relationship to each other and the verticals in the same relationship to each other, even if there was spacing doing other things in between, we got to the same result. Okay. So I'm going to go through another set here real quick. We're going to go ahead and get rid of those. And I'm going to look at, if I reset everything real quick. Now I'm starting at my original. Now for this second set, I can do A, B, C, D. So A is first. That's stretching things out vertically. B then squeezes things in horizontally. C raises everything up by 1. And D moves everything to the left by 1. Okay. Now, so the thing to note here is, compared to the first set, in the first set I had A before C and I had D before B. In the second set, I always have still A before C, but now B comes before D. And notice that put me in a different position. So let's do, I'm going to do one more. I'm going to do the B, A, C, D. So B squeezes things in horizontally. Then A stretches things vertically. Then C lifts things up by 1. And D moves things over by 1. Okay? Now we can go through the process for all these others, but it functions the same way. You can see that each group of 6 gives you different ways to get to the same solution, keeping in mind that you have the vertical, either it goes vertical shift, then vertical stretch, or it goes vertical stretched, then vertical shift. And then the same situation for the horizontals. So maybe we'll do one from this last section. Let me go ahead and bring everything back to our original state. And so now, one that I can do, I can notice all of these. The C comes before the A. C is always before A, no matter where we put them. And then the D is always before B. So for this one, I'm going to do, let's do DBCA. So D, so I shift first, D, shift over by 1, then B, I shift and then compress, So I had my dB. Now I'm going to do my CA. C is lift up by 1, and then do my stretching. Now notice what happens here. If I lift everything up by 1 and then stretch, everything is above the axis, so everything gets pulled up away. But if I stretch first, these things down here become more negative. They get stretched out in the downward direction, and these pieces get stretched in the upward direction. So that's why when we do our CA, it ends up being different and higher than our AC version. And in the same way, our dB version is different from our BD version, right? I can show you the purple is the same. So these both have the CA, but the black has dB and the purple has BD. And they move in different directions. So notice when the vertical movements are the same, as in these cases, the CA, but the horizontal movements are different. They're placed horizontally differently. But if we compare the purple to the green, we notice that they both have the BD. They both have B then D. So that's the horizontal is the same, but green has AC and purple has CA. So vertically, they come to different results. And so you can kind of predict what the changes are going to be, whether the vertical is the same, the vertical order is the same, or the horizontal order is the same. It's going to tell you where the graph is going to be different. Okay. So hopefully that gave you an idea of how to approach this. I'm going to go ahead and link this Desmos so you can play with it a little more. I'm going to link it in the description of the video, and I hope that can guide you even more.